What is happening, good people? We're here on the 23rd anniversary of 9/11 for Macro Dirt Podcast number 12. How's everybody doing today? What's up, JD?
What's up, Dick Nose?
Dick Nose is a name I can attach to. How are you, bro? What's going
I'm
on
good.
today?
Uh, I'm licking my wounds. I look for the last 4 to 6 macro dirts. I've been barking about commodities. What we've had is basically like a global growth scare. Okay, where China is this deflationary force and they're going into some kind of deflationary depression and they're exporting that deflation to the rest of the world. And we're concerned about growth here and people think we're going into a recession. The payroll number was not that bad. It was not that bad. It missed by 23,000 jobs. Average hourly earnings were up. The unemployment rate was down. It was not that bad. And the market got spooked. Commodities were for sale. I mean, we're looking at like the cheapest that commodities have been relative to stocks in history, right? There are more DeMarc 13s than there are jorts in Myrtle Beach, right? Like there are DeMarc 13s all over the place. And it's funny. I woke up this morning and I checked my phone, and commodities were up across the board. And now SPOOs are down 90 handles, and there's waves of selling in commodities again, like it never stops.
Yeah.
So I don't know. So this is for me. This has hurt like a frozen tampon. Like this has been really painful.
I can't exactly identify with that, but I think I see where you're going with it. That's good imagery there, I suppose. In my opinion, the way I see it is, until the bond market stops rallying, right? We've got this deflationary hocus pocus going on, and it's not
Yep.
helping that tens are breaking the range bottom. Like there's an interim range bottom from a couple of months ago that or we're now cracking down through. And like we've said before on this podcast, that gives portfolio managers green light go to monkey hammer commodities. And that's just it, right? So I got a feeling that we're going to see everything turn at once. And I'm into looking for that sentimental capitulation at the top, the Icarus print in the bond market,
Yep.
that capitulative heave in the commodities market where maybe we make a new low and then come back and close positive one day. And I have a really strong feeling, JD, that that's going to happen on the same day.
Yes, for sure. It's
Right?
all
Like
going to
it's,
happen on the same
yeah,
day. Yeah.
exactly. And it's going to be hellacious. And the day is going to start off where you and I are talking about the same thing. Like, oh, here it comes. More of the same. Jesus H. Christ. And then at 4:00, we're going to look at each other and call each other up probably and say, did you see that?
Yeah.
And it'll be one of those scenarios.
By the way, I put a quote on Twitter last night. Um, it is better to be out of a trade and wanting to get in it than in a trade and wanting to get out of it. Right. And that's where I am right now. I'm in this trade and I want to get out of it, So
Yeah, and if you don't have that saying written on your wall as a trader, you're missing something. That's like one of the most important axioms of trading. And if you think about it before putting each position on, you usually do a little bit of extra due diligence to decide if you really want risk where you're putting risk on. What are we thinking about oil, JD? The setup is really interesting. I just floated a chart in the Navigator that showed that hedge fund long positions in futures were down to zero, right? Like historic lows. There are no long positions.
in all of history, the positioning is the most bearish in history, and
Right. The shorts position is growing now.
when it went negative, that
Right.
includes during the European debt crisis. Any time in history, the positioning is most bearish right now.
Yeah, that's really important. And we're going to harp on that until we're blue in the face, because we know that at some point there's going to be a bullseye drawn on that short position when oil dry heaves and doesn't go down anymore and all the shorts forget to cover.
Yeah.
So that's the scenario that I think we're heading into. OPEC cutting the demand forecasts and things like that does not help. That's where all the shorts have room and reason to pile on. the investment banks have room and reason to go around and say, yeah, this is deflationary. There was one beacon out there, Jeff Curry, formerly of Goldman Sachs, now at the Carlyle Group, who said that, the supply glut is being dramatically overstated in the energy space. And that's another thing that you have to keep in the back of your mind alongside the massive short position now, right?
I saw the Jeff Curry piece. It was a good piece. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's a conscientious guy. I can read
Yeah.
him all day long. He's very good at what he does without question. So what do we say? Does it look like we're back to like the recession now, right? The recession trade, right? We're not backing off in the S&P like we've got that triple whammy, right? The yen carry, Nvidia bubble, curve rally, right? Like that was the steep dunk to 5100. We are backing off in an orderly, recessionary, deflationary mode, right? How do you think that plays out in the stock market?
I mean, so two things. Number one, open your eyes and ears, look around. Does it seem like we are in a recession? Like I can't get a parking spot at the airport. The security line is an hour long. Like it's we are not in a recession. We are not going to be in a recession. We are in a little bit of a slowdown. That's what this is. Okay. The market today, stocks when I walked in here, stocks were down like 90 handles. Um
Yes.
I would say 10% of that is because of CPI and 90% of it is because of the debate last night because of Kamala Harris. You
How
know,
do you think that played out?
well, I walked in this morning and the first thing I did was I looked at the election betting odds on the Stossel website, and Kamala's up 51 to 47 and Trump was up 49 to 47 yesterday. So she's had like a 6 point bump, like a 4 point bump. So basically, I watched the debate. Like the Kamala team said they were going to bait him. Trump's team knew they were going to bait him. She made one comment about his rallies, and it was like feeding a gremlin after midnight. And he was like normal for like 3 minutes, and then he just like freaked out. But the
Yeah.
moderators were terrible. They fact checked the shit out of him. They didn't fact check her. She lied about a bunch of stuff. They didn't fact check her. I mean, it was like walking into like a dark alley and getting the shit kicked out of you, you
Well,
know.
what it was walking into a trap, right? Because the honest thinker says, wait a minute, just intellectually, Donald Trump versus Kamala, there's a no contest going on, right? But you had to know that if they wanted her to debate him, that they were going to set a trap. And to me, it looked like they set the trap between having the moderators all over. It was like a three-man attack against Trump, and then all the news is today are pictures of Kamala's wise ass face, right? Like her snide, cynical face. And the media is using that today to show you how she beat him up in that election. And that's the storyline that they're going with. And they probably chooched all the polls in the right direction as well. So they've got her right back in the race. And you think that's what the sell off is today, eh?
That's what I think it is. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's kind of out
90%
of
of it.
nowhere. Stocks opened up. They were kind of a little bit volatile this morning on the opening, and then wonk.
I mean, I was watching S&P futures last night during the debate, and when she first landed a punch, futures traded off like 20 handles. Like,
Really?
yeah, it was pretty fascinating to watch.
Man,
So,
they're that sensitive. The algos are that sensitive to
yeah.
Kamala smirks, right? She's moving the S&P with an I gotcha smirk, right? Like just unbelievable. What do you think happens with the Federal Reserve, right? We are 1 week away from September 18th, the FOMC meeting. We're going to get a rate cut. I'm wondering if that's not the linchpin to that sort of day where everything reverses. Do you think that could be the case?
That could be the case. I mean, right now we're pricing in 85% chance of a quarter point. Okay. 15% chance of a half point. So they're probably going to go a quarter point. Um, I don't know. Maybe they go a half point, which would be interesting because that would steepen the shit out of the yield curve. The long end would probably sell off massively. Um,
And if we steepen the shit out of the yield curve in quick, short order, we know that the VIX responds to that. And a lot of that sell off that we've been seeing is because in the last, well, the more stable sell off that we've been seeing is because in the last 2 weeks, or actually 4 weeks, we've seen the yield curve go from minus 20 bips to plus 5 bips, right? And that's why the S&P is rotating aggressively, right? With this big rotation out of all of these commodity stocks. We're going back into some technology, into Nvidia and software while rates are falling. So it's put a very, very hardcore rotation on the S&P. My sense is that we still, where are you on the S&P now? My sense is now definitely with this double top in the rearview mirror and a lot of interest rate volatility ahead. My sense is that we can still back off to the 200-day moving average around 5,300 in the S&P. What are your thoughts?
I think there's support at 5,300. I think we have support at 5,300. So
That's fair. That's fair. What anything in metals, JD? You want to talk about gold or base metals? When I look at them as part of the BCom, I see precious metals kind of doing what I would expect them to do and slowly and methodically appreciating.
gold
And
gold
yeah,
fails every day at 25.30. Every single day it makes a run up to 25.30 and fails. So I don't. I've been saying this for a while. I don't want to buy it until it breaks out or until it sells off meaningfully to like 2,300. Right.
yeah,
So if if I walk in one morning and it's trading 25 half, I'll buy it for sure.
yeah. I mean, so that's fair, but that's a glass half empty approach. I'm looking at gold like this sucker is sticking above 2,500. It's staying basis points from the highs. It's still making higher lows on a sort of micro level. And I feel like it's just fine. I sleep like a baby with a humongous allocation towards physical gold right now in the markets, not actually physical, but portfolio wise, without wanting to be in that long S&P trade that I was in for 10 months. That money comes out of the S&P and for me goes right into spot gold
Yep.
because I'd rather have it sitting there than sitting in the bank account at 3% or 4% or whatever it is. What base metals? I want to just touch on them, because as part of our look at the BCom, you have to notice that the pullback in base metals, while it has been steep, they've all pulled back into trend. They've all pulled back into the moving averages, right? So if we have that scenario where base metals aren't really going to get cracked through there from here, gold holding its appreciative rally, if we see the turnaround in energy, that's going to be the bottom for the BCom, man. So I get a little bit of confidence from looking at the metals tape
Yeah.
within.
I mean, when I look at a chart of copper, it's basing, it's bottoming. I'm not seeing a signal yet. I mean, if you weren't concerned about mark to market, you could just buy some copper and put it in the back book, and 6 months later, it would be a buck higher.
Yeah.
But I like to be a little bit more scientific about entry points, and I think I can get a better entry point. I think it's got a little bit more downside. So
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, and I wasn't really looking at that as a specific trade, kind of just how they're playing into the commodity complex as we're trying to. I mean, as I'm trying to hold on to dear life for some positions that I've got as well.
yeah,
But my pad is light. I've got energy, gold, and the BCom right now. And like we said, we're struggling with the BCom, but it's all going to happen in one day where we're going to get the peaks, exhaustions, and reversals, and it's all going to go down. So, so I think we covered the markets very well for today and kind of giving everybody a gist of how we're looking at this commodity slash bond market playing into each other. And it's a really heavy day to go off market topic, but it's an important thing for me to talk about on 9/11 because I had a really deep connection to the Twin Towers. But JD, give me your spin on how you approach today on the 23rd anniversary of a really horrible event that you and I were kind of facing real time back then.
yeah. I mean, first of all, I had a close connection to the Twin Towers too. When I was 5, 6, 7 years old, I was on Governor's Island, and outside my front window, I could see the Twin Towers in 1979. They
Mm-hmm.
had been built for like 5 years. And
Mm-hmm.
I was like a little kid, and I was like, man, it would be really cool to work there, right? Like work there someday. I wonder what people do in those buildings. So I grew up looking at those buildings. I'm not going to tell the whole 9/11 story, but basically, I had just started at Lehman, and I had an interview on the corporate bond desk that day, and I was outside the World Financial Center. The plane hit the first tower. It sounded like a bomb going off. I actually ran over to the tower to see if I could do anything, to see if I could help. I was fresh out of the Coast Guard. I was like 27 years old. I was in the best shape of my life. There's chunks falling off the building, people jumping out. It was, I was like, I can't help. And basically, I was standing right across the street from the second tower, and the second plane flew in right over my head and hit the building. So then I ran over to the ferry. I took a ferry back to Hoboken. When I walked in my apartment at Hoboken, the towers collapsed. So that's a short version of the story.
You spoke about how cool it would be to work in that building, and my dad worked in that building since about 1979, and so a lot of my childhood was spent, on days that we'd go in and visit my dad at work, would be going up to his desk. And I thought it was so cool that you had to take two elevators. You had to take the one to the 44th floor and then get out and take another one up to the 68th floor. And obviously the view that you have up there is unbelievable. And then I got a job out of school. My first job, I worked on the 107th floor of the North Tower for Sumitomo Bank, and spent 2 years working there. And one of the wildest things about working there was you would get into the subway at your apartment and on a rainy day, and kind of underground go into the concourse and into the Twin Towers and then up to the 107th floor. And on the rainy day that you left behind, there was a floor of clouds and nothing but sunshine, and you knew that you had arrived at your desk at work, which was just above the storm that was taking place out.
Yeah.
And that was fucking wild, quite honestly, to experience that. So that was a really cool thing. And my uncle Mike, my dad's brother, was in the South Tower when the second plane hit, on the phone with his wife, who got disconnected immediately, and she called us up immediately and said, I think Mike's dead. And looking at the tower where he had been sitting and guessing where his floor was, we were like, yeah, that doesn't look good at all. And as it turned out, he made it out of the building as the first tower went down, and which was the same tower he was in that got hit second, and made it out alive with the whole building coming down right behind him, essentially. And so that was a really, really heavy day for me and for everybody else, having so many friends at Cantor Fitzgerald, guys that I grew up with, guys that were my brokers, guys that I had summer houses with. I mean, I had real deep relationships and friendships with guys up there. And so that was just, it was gut wrenching to watch. And so now 23 years later, I guess you just think about, the people that they left behind and how they're doing today, because it's got to be a tough day to hold up. If you've been to the 9/11 museum and seen like as much as you can take in of that event, there's nothing that it can do but kind of dramatically change how you look at life and how you look at the world, I suppose. So hopefully one day we'll find out what really happened. I'm not sure that story's out, and I don't want to get conspiratorial in our podcast, but Donald Rumsfeld lost $2.3 trillion the day before, and somehow that got wiped off the map, right? Okay, we're going to go write something lighter. That's a good idea. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So I was in Washington State. I was in Port Angeles, Washington. It was 1996, and I went to the movies with my wife. We weren't married yet. I mean, this is a long time ago, and we saw Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. And I fell in love with Claire Danes. Like she was like the best Juliet of all time. Leonardo DiCaprio. It's actually a great movie. Like I watched it recently. I have it on DVD, and I watched it. It's really well done. Like that Romeo and Juliet movie from Baz Luhrmann. So
Yeah.
But Claire Danes was so great.
Yeah, that was a cool remake, cool story. She's not my type, but I hear you. I don't think I've had like a movie crush since The Girl in Vision Quest, and I don't even remember her. Linda Fiorentino, I think her real name was. She looked like a Long Island girl from head to toe, and I was like, wow, look at that. They stuck her in the movie for me, and she's hot. So that was kind of that was like the only thing that I can remember about like kind of thinking of someone that way in an old movie. Who is the other one that you brought up that you keep bringing up to me in Highlander Endgame?
Highlander Endgame, which was the third Highlander movie, and it was god awful. It was a terrible movie. But there was this woman in there. Her name was Lisa Barbrusha, and she played Faith. I think she was from New Jersey or Brooklyn or something like that.
Yeah.
Very Italian looking girl. Man, she was good looking.
Yeah.
If you got a second, if you're watching this on YouTube, just Google Lisa Barbrusha, pull up the photos. She was
Extremely exotic looking. Yeah.
yeah, extremely exotic looking. Yeah.
100%. 100%. All right. Now that we got the crush session out of the
Yeah.
way, what were you talking about high school sports, JD? What's our angle on that today?
Uh I did wrestling in high school. My senior year, I did not start until my senior year. So the story is that my high school had the best wrestling program in the state. They were state champs 6 years in a row. Okay. So I was going to the Coast Guard Academy. I had gotten accepted, and I was like 190 pounds of chewed bubble gum. And I'm like, I want to get in shape to go to the Coast Guard Academy. So I'm going to try out for the wrestling team. Now, the wrestling team was like 25 kids. 120 people would show up for tryouts, and the tryouts would last a week, and people would quit. And basically it was just like attrition. Like at the end of the week, everybody, it was so hard, everybody would quit, and you would have 25 kids left. So
Yeah.
I made the team. I actually wrestled JV. I didn't wrestle varsity. I had a 4-4 record. um, but that experience, those workouts were so incredibly hard. The practices were like 4 hours. We used to run up and down stairs for like 2 hours at a time. I'd be wearing a sauna shirt. I lost like 30 pounds. Like it was incredible. So
Yeah, the one thing that I learned about high school wrestling very quickly was that it was not something that I would be cut out for. Like I remember like playing casual pickup basketball in the gym while like wrestlers were working out, and I'd see like one of my buddies dying, like utterly dying, and be like, "Dude, are you okay?" And he'd look at me and be like, "I haven't eaten in 3 days."
I know.
And once you get that dietary part of the thing of the, training in there, like I'm out. You know what
I
I mean?
was
Like
I was eating I was eating like broccoli with mustard on it.
yeah, like that's one part of like, fitness that I can't get towards. Like if I'm going to be working out, I need calories, I need energy and things like that. I only played one sport in high school, played lacrosse at Chaminade, which is a great place to play. I played for a great coach, a guy who's still the head coach today, which is pretty remarkable. And the thing that I would say that was kind of awesome about that, my one takeaway was that my senior year, we won the Catholic League championship. And on paper, we were probably the fourth or fifth best team in the Catholic League, right? But it was one of those seasons where we had great leadership, we had great coaches, and our team loved each other. Our group of 10, 15 guys, lacrosse players, juniors and seniors, we were thick as thieves on and off the field, and when you have relationships like that with people, and there are guys that coach professional sports teams this all over the world, when you have an unbreakable bond with your teammates, you are going to perform better than a team that does not have that bond. And that's usually something that you see play out over and over in pro sports and college sports and things like that.
I
So I
think,
thought that was
dude, I think chemistry matters so much in professional sports. You know what I
exactly.
mean? Like,
Yeah,
I think a lot of GMs in baseball will just kind of pick players like,
on
this
paper.
on paper without really thinking about the effect they're going to have in the clubhouse. And do you remember Milton Bradley played for the Indians? Do you remember that guy?
I remember the name. Yeah, yeah,
Okay, he was toxic, right?
yeah.
Like he was the biggest asshole in the world, the most hated guy in baseball. And the story is that when he was playing in high school, there were some scouts watching his high school game. He hits a massive home run, like a 500-foot home run. He's rounding the bases. He comes in the dugout, and nobody gives him a high five.
Oof.
And like the scouts saw this and they passed. They're like, we don't want him. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah. That's a lot about what goes on, with like college recruiting. And I'll get a call every once in a while about a kid that plays at our high school, kind of, which is a coach looking for information, and they want to know like, what's the kid like? Is he cool to be around? Does he have a lot of friends? Is he a leader on the
yep.
team? Is he an outcast? Is he this? Is he tough to get along with? Is he fun? Is he silly? Like what, give me a read on it. So I do believe that plays into a lot too. And you can really upset the apple cart with one bad apple, just to use the actual term. But think about like some of the teams that have succeeded that were like that. And then there are actually exceptions for probably, so many of those teams. Like if you look at like when Reggie Jackson came to the Yankees, right? Like he was locker room toxicity, and that team still figured out how to win, which was unbelievable. And you look at like some of the basketball teams that have won championships and hear stories about how they didn't get along the way and stuff. So I guess maybe it plays both ways, but I would rather be on the team that's got a good cohesive bond and where everybody's looking out for each other.
Do you remember on the Yankees? Do you remember Mel Hall? Do you remember that name?
Yeah, sure. First baseman.
No, I think he was an outfielder.
Oh, okay.
He was he used to put his batting glove in his back pocket, so when he would hit a home run, he would wave bye bye to the pitcher when he was running around the bases. But he was one of those toxic guys, and he used to. Bernie Williams was like a rookie, and Bernie was very quiet and he's very introverted. And Mel Hall used to terrorize him like all the time. Well, fast forward a little bit, Mel Hall was dating like high school girls on Long Island and like hooking up with high school girls. And he actually went to jail for sexual assault, or I don't know the exact charge, but
that was him that happened to.
that
I
was
remember.
him. Yeah,
I remember that story. I didn't realize that was Mel Hall. Holy
Yeah.
smokes! There's a bad look for you, huh? So to finish off with just let's get our market legs under us again. This bond market rally has been ferocious. We're pricing in deflation, recession. And at some point, they're going to have to stop pounding on commodities. And JD, you're trying to hold on to this trade right now. What are your final thoughts, JD, today to leave people with that might be in this trade with us?
Just hold on, man. Just hold on. I mean, it's funny because you have to be disciplined about risk, right?
Yep.
There's got to be a point at which you stop yourself out of anything,
Right. Yep.
I'm not at that point yet. Getting a little closer by the day. Like I said, when I woke up this morning, commodities were up across the board. Now we're back to unch, and it's super frustrating. So I'm just trying to hold on.
But you make a good point about risk there, right? And traders have really attached to the things that we've spoken about in terms of trading tactics, right? And every position's got to have a stop out. The way that JD and I are both looking at it in kind of energy and commodities is, as a big boy, you're allowed to sort of get your stop out of the way and kind of see what happens for a little bit, as long as there's the stop there, right? A lot of times, if you give yourself that chance, you can stay in a trade. And at worst case, you have what's called the Polish pass out, where you get back to break even, you get to sell it, and there's no harm done. Other times, you have to hit the ejector seat at the lower stop, take a bigger loss, and go for a double cheeseburger at Wendy's immediately, right? And as long as you have that risk management technique in place, at least you'll always survive. So we're going to continue to manage risk. We're going to continue to have an absolute price where we're out. And that's it. We're going to keep on trucking in this trade.
Yep.
Hasta la vagina, everybody.
Hasta la vagina.